In this video, I'm going to use Nodejs together with editorx to pass data to and from both platforms through an API layer. Node is a great backend service, but you always need a frontend to present that data. And this is where the no-coding platform editorx comes into play. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. Here is the Nodejs setup we created in the last few videos. We've got different endpoints here to showcase the API live as well as pulling in data. We're getting this data from the front end, specifically on editorx here on this website calculator page. We're pulling in things like the website size, the pricing, the time to take, pulling all those values into the URL, which is then passed into a request, which goes to the Nodejs server. The goal here is to grab all the values, such as how long the website takes, as well as how large it is, and then to pass them all here and have these calculations done. Let's actually begin by creating our very first calculation inside of Nodejs here, which is the time to do. This value is sort of how long it takes for you to make a single page on the website. The very first figure is just 10 to 20 hours to create a page. I'm actually going to do an average here of 15 hours as a general baseline, and I'll have this as an actual number rather than a string so that we can later do some calculations with it. Let me go through and add the others in here as well. I also have 5 to 10 hours, so I'll average that to 7.5. And I also have the final option here, which is a very fast page done in just 2 to 4 hours. Now, the goal here isn't to be that specific, it's just to give a general idea. The next thing I want to do here is to do a final catch in case, for example, we're missing any other types of inputs. The way I'm going to do this is passing in else if. So if the first value is the value of 10 to 20, else if the value is 10 to 5, else if the value is 2 to 4, finally it'll pre-default to 15. That way, we're not passing data straight to some of the endpoints later, for example, if we had a database, but we're basically securing what options are available and pre-defaulting it back to a default option if none have been selected properly. Now we can do the same thing for the next page. The next page here is how big the website is, or the size of the website, whether it's a single page or a multi-page website. So if we have a look, we do have a few different options here. I don't think that we finished making them all. We had the single page, we had 3 to 5 pages, and we had quite a few more, up to 50 pages. So what I'll do is I'll update the syntax here inside of editorx just so that we have the same options as we have in the Figma design. This will be as easy as literally doing some copy pasting, and this is why I always like to have a bit of a process here of designing first and then creating the front end and finally the back end on Node.js. Now with this done, we'll just have one more option here for 50 pages. So I might copy paste this button that I have just here and paste it in below, and that'll be our final option. Now for this option, I think it's going to be hard to really guess just how many pages is involved in a website over 50 pages. So I'm just going to do an average of 50, and if it's that large, then you might have to do some custom calculations for that. This is just a guesstimate. With the front end now updated, we need to make the same options available on the back end on Node.js. This is where we can really choose the syntax that we're validating in. We can pass this in as a string called single page, or we could even have just the number 1. That number 1 could be, for example, a physical or an actual integer or a number. But I find that sometimes it's just easier to pass in strings. They're easy to be read, and if we want to later convert them to a number, we'll have more control over exactly what that is. I think in future versions of the calculator, we might even let some integers in here, and maybe we'll do some parsing to make sure that they're real integers, but for the time being, this should basically do. We do have one extra button here, which was the 50 plus pages, so let me just copy paste an extra else if and paste this in. And then all I really need to do is update the values themselves, so 1 page can be 1, 3 to 5 pages can be 4.5, 25 pages can represent 15 to 45 pages, and 50 can just represent 50 pages. So this will be validating the website size, which is now done. We do have another item here which we need to check against, and this is one that I don't think I've included yet. This is the hourly pricing that you charge, or the hourly rate anyway. The hourly rate will be how much you bill per hour, in the sense that everyone is a little bit different, and I've got a design here of some general pricing. We've got 25 an hour, 50 an hour, 100 an hour, and 150 plus. I think this should be okay to get us started, but I don't yet have a page for this. So I think I might have to create a brand new page for it and just call it something like hourly rate, I suppose. Let's actually plug that in. Now I want to use the same sort of format that I have for all the other pages. And I actually created a master section for this. And the masters are basically like an existing component in, say, React. I'm just going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to use it on this page. And then we're going to just customize it with some new options. So here I've created it. We still have that existing section on top. So let me actually scroll down a little bit just to make sure it's there. It is. And let me delete this section here. So what I'm going to do is just jump into Figma once more and copy across some of the syntax as well as wording so that it's the same in both the front end as the design. This will include the title as well as the subtitle so that people know what the instructions are. And after I'm done with that, I'll just update the options here for the hourly rates. This will include adding the 25 an hour, which is often an option here if you're a beginner just starting to learn. Then we've got $50 an hour. This is sort of if you've already known the basics and now you're getting your foot into freelancing or working. Then we've got $100 an hour. This is if you're closer to being a professional freelancer and working quite a bit. And then $150 an hour, which is often found when you're working for a business or in corporate that has additional overheads to charge. With these options now ready, we can probably jump into the backend and define them as actual options that will turn into figures that we can use later for the calculations. So I'm just going to copy paste all of these into the Node.js environment here with the else if. And these are nice and readable for a human, at least. I think these will do. And I can probably create an integer version of each one of these. And the goal here will be to have all these values multiply later on to create an overall price that you should be charging for the website. So I think we now have all the building blocks in order to do this inside of Node.js, and our backend should now be able to calculate all of this. I'm going to add this into a console log. So we're going to have the hourly rate. We're going to, I suppose, times this by the time that it takes to do it, and finally times that by the website size itself. Now all of these we could probably border together as a single option, and here it is. This is the cost of the website. All of this is just looking a little bit messy though. So what I'm thinking is to have its own value, maybe a value called price like we had earlier, just making sure that it's not replicating any other values. And the price will be these values multiplied together, and then we can simply console log out the price and pass that back in as a response from the server. And this is basically it. We've got Node.js now ready and prepped to pass in a price to the front end. On here, I previously had a bit of testing happening where I was calling the API just to make sure that it was working from the last video. This time though, we might need to just comment out all of this code because we're going to replace it. We're going to head to the very last page and then do the API lookups. We're just going to set storage and get the storage items that we've defined in earlier parts. So let me copy the code that we have here and let me actually paste it into this website section for the website sizes and comment out all this other code that we won't be using anymore. I'll paste this in, and realistically what I want to happen here is for us to set the item of the website size, and if we select the single page, we're going to define that value as single page. We can cut out most of the rest, and then we're just going to call Wix location to head to the next page, which is the rate page. That basically defines this function when we click on this button. And then finally on the hourly rate page, here we can define the API call once we get from storage all the events. We'll need to create an on-click handler. So I'm going to create an ID here for this item, which can't have any spaces. We're going to open this up in the master page.js. And then on the right-hand side here, I'm going to define an on-click handler. Now be aware when you do define on-click handlers, they can't have a number at the very start, so we'll need to change that. Here I've reworded it to per hour 25_click, and now I can start pasting in that code that I previously had to finally complete this function. There are a few things that are going to happen here. The very first is we're going to get from local storage or from local the values here for pricing as well as time to do and website size. For the hourly rate, I'm just going to define that as a variable, which will be the string of $25 an hour. And let's just make sure that we've got the syntax right here. So we'll grab the one here for website sizing and paste that in and make sure the value here is the same. With all of these done, we just need to make sure that the URL down here includes the hourly rate. So I'm going to do an and sign and pass that in as part of that. All of these should now be passed into the fetch request, which should go to the server and basically do the lookups that we defined earlier. This should come back with a JSON object, which we should be able to test now that we've got this all up and running. The Node.js instance is on port 3000 running here, and I've also got an editorx website server here, which is publishing this to a domain, which is just a random series of numbers, but it's on HTTPS, so we can test this out. I'll head to the very first page for hourly pricing and select the first option. Then I'll select 10 to 20 hours as well as a single page. And then finally the 25 per an hour option. When I click it, I get the result here back, which is the JSON of the price, $375. And we can see the console logout on Node here shows us those stats, which basically times together to create 375. So success. This is basically how you configure Node.js together with editorx. In the next few videos, I'll finish up this pricing calculator, basically letting anyone to start to use it. On top of that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.